And ejaculating occasionally is not a problem. It's when you abuse this bodily process just to get a little bit of a dopamine hit that it becomes a serious problem for your emotional, physical, mental health. Hey, what's up guys? I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can manifest your ideal life. If you want to learn more about sexual mastery, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified when I go live and release new videos. Make sure you get my free ejaculation control course through the link in the video description below. So in this video, I'm going to talk about breaking the addiction to ejaculation, especially ejaculatory orgasm for men, right? And I think one of the best ways to do this, versus just giving some theoretical information, is maybe share my own process of experiencing this in my life, right? Like most men, I developed most of my sexual habits in my teenage years based on sitting on a computer watching porn for hours at a time and jerking off. And this led me to associate sexual pleasure with ejaculation. Like that became the whole focal point of initially my masturbation sessions, but also during sex with partner in the future as well. And that sex became all about just an ejaculation. Like in the middle of sex, be like, yeah, this feels good, this feels great, but like, oh, I really want to get to this ejaculatory orgasm because that's going to feel even better. And kind of this instant gratification, I want everything right now mindset that kind of plagues our modern world, right? And so when I started learning sexual kung fu practices, which was initially from studying Montauk Chia's books, and then I found some teachers to study with as well, there was a little bit of a process of kind of overcoming the feeling that I needed to ejaculate to end a sexual session, whether that was, again, by myself or with a partner. Because what happens is during sexual activity, you're building all this pressure in the genitals. You're building this arousal. For men, our sexual energy is very fiery. It's very volatile. And we need to be able to balance it to be able to hold that charge in our body. So basically, because I hadn't done a lot of work to really prepare my body to handle this increase in aroused sexual energy, it was difficult for me to contain this feeling of arousal. Like at the end of the session, I would feel kind of edgy, like, okay, like I feel like I need to ejaculate, like I want more and more to ejaculate. And so I often would ejaculate at the end and the beginning. But what I found was that as I was learning the techniques to draw the sexual energy out of the genitals, which is really the heart of sexual kung fu as far as sexual techniques, which is bringing all that pressure, all that sexual energy out of the genitals and opening up the body so it can contain this energy and turn it into another form, this form of energy that you can use later. So I started to have some sessions where I would walk away at the end not having ejaculated, right? Because I was using this drawing techniques to pull the energy out of my genitals, to move it through the microcosmic orbit, the pathways of the body, and to store it in my belly at the end. And I remember at the end of these sessions, I felt really good. Because here's the thing, it's like when you're having sex or you're masturbating, whatever, as you approach that point of no return, your arousal's high, your sexual energy's high, you feel pretty amazing. Often you feel just like, this pulsing, pleasurable sexual energy. Really, you're in a state of orgasm on a subtle level at that point. And then, you're tempted to go over the edge and ejaculate because you're like, well, I want it to feel better. I want to feel this release. And so you hit that point and, it feels good. It maybe intensifies more, or maybe it stays about the same as it did right before that point for about 5, maybe 10 seconds at the most, right? And then what happens, you feel a bit deflated. It's kind of a letdown actually after such a feeling of high energy, high arousal, high desire. And then you're just kind of like, oh, like, okay, now what am I going to do? I can't continue with that. I can't have another orgasm right now. I kind of have to recover. And I remember that I just started to feel really bummed out by that feeling that, you feel like you've lost something often if you're ejaculating frequently. And when I walked away from a session, not having ejaculated, having stored that energy in my body, I felt amazing. Like, yeah, I still had desire. I still had some sexual desire, but I was able to put it into other things. And that desire started to drive me throughout the day. Like I felt really creative. I'm a musician. I'd be working on music projects. I'd have all these creative ideas just effortlessly flowing out of me. I'd feel really confident when I went out into the world. I just felt like charged up. And having had that experience, it gave me a whole different perspective on what it really means to ejaculate at the end of a session and how that temptation often leads to disappointment, right? To experience a little bit of intensified pleasure for only 5 seconds at the cost of maybe feeling, strong and confident and charged up for the rest of the day, or maybe even for a few days, depending how depleted you are. It just didn't seem like a very good trade-off anymore, honestly. So in my training sessions, where I was practicing playing with my sexual energy, there would still be that temptation to just ejaculate at the end. And I would still do it occasionally. And when I did, it didn't feel good. It was like, oh, that was actually really disappointing. That wasn't even that much more pleasurable. And now I've, I lost my semen and I have to start over, wait a few days to do this again maybe. There just became a point where it was like, it's just not worth it anymore. Whenever I had a temptation to ejaculate, I just thought of, well, how am I going to feel after that? Like, how am I going to feel for the next 48, 72 hours after that? It's like, I'm not going to feel as high energy as I do right now. So this made me develop this kind of mindset around seeing the bigger picture of things, being able to see things in the long term and not just cave into an immediate short-term pleasure. I think it's the same as like having a kind of an eating addiction or something like that. Kind of like being like, oh, I'd really like to eat a cookie, because it tastes good. Okay, you get maybe a minute of like chewing on this cookie, having some flavors in your mouth, then that diminishes. And then you often feel pretty shitty after that, right? When you binge on some garbage food, you just feel like shit. Like you don't really get anything from that. And I don't want to put ejaculation in the same category because obviously this is a beautiful process of nature. It's what allows us to create life and it's part of our human experience. It's part of the endocrine system and ejaculating occasionally is not a problem. It's when you abuse this bodily process just to get a little bit of a dopamine hit that it becomes a serious problem for your emotional, physical, mental health. And also what I found was that the more I trained in kind of the foundational practices of sexual energy work and sexual kung fu. So the foundational practices being preparing the body for this sexual energy, qigong exercises, breath work, meditation to open up the energy channels, to clear out blockages, clear out negative energies. The more I did this type of preparatory work, which I really overlooked in the beginning. In the beginning, I just wanted to go straight to the sexual energy practices, moving the aroused sexual energy through the body. Because I had skipped this foundational work in the beginning, I wasn't having as much success with my practices as I could have been, meaning that it was more difficult for me to draw this sexual energy out of my genitals. It was more difficult for me to feel content with not ejaculating and so on. And it was once I really went deep into the sexual kung fu training systems, started a daily qigong practice, learned how to ground my energy, open up the channels, still my mind, balance my energy, open up my microcosmic orbit, and to do breath work and all these things. That's when the sexual energy practices became pretty effortless. And that's when I really lost interest in ejaculating frequently because I felt so good, not just for my practice, but then when I was having a sexual experience, it became more drawn out. That's the thing with the sexual kung fu exercises. It's like, instead of just being content with this 5 to 10 second ejaculatory orgasm, for most men, sex lasts a few minutes. When I started the sexual kung fu techniques, you learn to draw that intensity out into much longer durations, 30 minutes, an hour, several hours maybe, right? To where you're riding these waves of full body bliss, full body orgasmic experience. Yeah, it's not exactly like having an ejaculatory orgasm over and over, but it's a more sustained state of orgasm that doesn't end in a release of your energy. And this is another thing men really get hung up on, is the fact that they need a release, right? This is what the ejaculatory orgasm is. It's a release of energy. If you release your energy too much, you're gonna have nothing left, right? And so men often abuse this, right? And so when you go to have a non-ejaculatory sexual experience, there's no release. You haven't lost anything. You've built more. You've built more of an energetic charge. And so if your system is not really open to handle that, then you may be uncomfortable with that intensified energy. So for you, the remedy may be to ejaculate more frequently or to do more of the foundational work to really open up the body so you can handle this higher charge of energy. And when you become okay with the fact that at the end of a non-ejaculatory sexual session, you're still going to have strong sexual desire. And to me, that's a good thing, right? Because it's that sexual desire that drives you to create, drives you to be successful, drives you to become more of who you are and to actually do something meaningful with your life. But it's when you are uncomfortable with sexual desire, you're uncomfortable with arousal, right? Which a lot of men are. A lot of men, as soon as they feel arousal, as soon as they feel sexual desire, they feel like they need to remove it from their body. Like, I gotta jerk off and ejaculate this out immediately, right? And there's also kind of this trip that a lot of men have who are doing no-fap with semen retention, like, oh, I have urges, there's something wrong with me, I can't ever have sexual urges. It's not a problem to have sexual urges. You're human, you're in a body. It means that you're healthy and your body wants to procreate, right? But it's when these urges control you. Like, as soon as you have an impulse, you have to do it, right? That is very poor self-control. It's very poor self-discipline. And it also means that you're not really transmuting your sexual energy, because to really be in command of your sexual energy, you're going to have a lot of sexual desire, but it doesn't drive you. You're comfortable with that feeling, like, oh yeah, okay, I have this thought of sex and it's nice and I'm aroused, but I don't need to act on it right now. Instead of acting on it, I'm going to breathe a little bit, move this energy through my microcosmic orbit, and then I'm going to put it into, playing into my instrument, make music out of it. I'm going to write a post or something, write something inspiring for people, right? I'm going to share what I know with the world. I'm going to put this energy into something so it starts to drive you. And so this is really about being okay with sexual desire and a heightened level of sexual energy in the body versus having this impulsive need to frequently release sexual energy outwards, right? Which is a very self-destructive pattern. So it is a process for sure of transitioning out of only having ejaculatory orgasms to having this full body experience of high arousal, high desire, high sexual energy just flooding through your channels and not getting angry and frustrated. So to kind of wrap it up, again, it's a process of learning more about your body, learning how to open it up, learning how to make sex and orgasm experience that's not just limited to your genitals alone, and being able to see the bigger picture of like, okay, well, if I ejaculate every time I have sex, if I masturbate and ejaculate every day, I'm not going to have much sexual energy built up to actually, work with, right? And I'm actually not going to feel that good because that 5 seconds of instant gratification is very inferior to, having hours-long sexual sessions and then capturing that energy and using it for the next week, right? And I think that this is not something that can be forced. You can't really force yourself just to stop ejaculating, right? The important thing is that you have something new that you're bringing into your life. For me, it wasn't about I need to stop ejaculating. It was about I want to have a heightened experience of sex. And part of that was opening up my energy body, moving the sexual energy upwards instead of outwards. And the more I did that, the more I naturally desired to almost exclusively have non-ejaculatory sexual experiences without any suppression or repression. It was a very organic process for me. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to do a deep dive into learning sexual kung fu practices and really lay solid foundations which will ensure your success in having non-ejaculatory orgasms, last much longer in bed, and have a much more fulfilling sexual experience, check out my 12-week course, Multi-Orgasmic Man. If it's not currently open in the future, you can sign up for the waitlist so you'll know when it opens again. So find more information in the description of this video. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and leave a comment below. Have a good day, my friends.